So now I would like to introduce our next speaker. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Nicole Garrison. Dr. Garrison is currently an assistant professor of biology at West Liberty University in West Virginia and a member of the WV-INBRE Bioinformatics Core Faculty. She earned a PhD at Auburn University, working on the phylogenomics, transcriptomics, and systematics of spiders. Her research utilizes a variety of next-generation sequencing technologies and involves the development of custom bioinformatic pipelines for a wide range of biological applications, from conservation biology to evolutionary biology and biomedical research. The primary foci of her current position are aiding researchers in the pre-processing, analysis, and interpretation of their sequencing data, as well as educating undergraduate students in bioinformatics methods and programming. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Nicole Garrison.
Thank you. Get my slide up here. Hey, so hi, thank you for having me. I am, as she said, a junior faculty and assistant professor of biology at West Liberty University. I have kind of a hybrid position, so I work with the genomics core, but I also teach courses, so general biology courses and specifically bioinformatics courses. So I'm really there to kind of develop this bioinformatic expertise at this primarily undergraduate institution. So this talk is just kind of about the approach that I'm taking, that we are taking in West Virginia to start training our students and begin that pipeline of bioinformatic expertise at the undergraduate level. I think for a lot of us, our exposure to bioinformatics happens kind of late in the game. And so we're trying to shift that timeline back a little bit earlier and get some of these younger students involved in learning bioinformatics. So West Liberty University, if you're not familiar with it, which I wouldn't really expect you to be, is a very small school in kind of a rural setting in West Virginia. So we have the distinction of being the first institute of higher education in the state. We actually predate the formation of West Virginia. Little fun fact. We have only about 2,500 undergraduates. So it's a very small campus, not a whole lot of students there. Many of the students that come to our university are local to the area or the tri-state area. A lot of them are non-traditional students. They're returning to education after being away, and many of them are dependent on scholarship support. So it is kind of an economically depressed area in some senses. A lot of our students may be first-time or first-generation college students as well. Despite all of this, we have developed a really strong biology department at West Liberty. We have a ton of undergraduate research currently happening. And so we have students in the lab generating data. And with the advances in sequencing, we're generating more and more big data sets. So there's this need, this increasing demand for bioinformatic expertise at our university. We also have a developing postgraduate program. So we have MA, MS programs, and we also have a professional physician's assistant program. So there's a lot of biomedically oriented students that are attending the university at different levels. We are part of the West Virginia INBRE network. So we're a partner institution. We work really closely with particularly Marshall University, especially the Genomics Core and Dr. Jim Denver, and West Virginia University. We're the site of a major research project. Among many other research activities that are happening there, Dr. Horzempa has a very well-developed lab that is looking at erythrocyte invasion by Francisella tularensis. Lots of microbiology, fun sequencing happening at West Liberty. We do a lot of our sequencing, most of our sequencing at the Genomics Core Facility, which is located at Marshall. And so this is kind of the other half of my duties, is to be the connection between the Genomics Core and the West Liberty faculty. So when they generate data, when their students generate data, I'm there to kind of act as the go-between and help them analyze and interpret what they have. So there are multiple sequencing projects ongoing many of them having to do with Francisella, but we are developing more and more independent kind of research programs that are utilizing this genomics core facility. So like I said, I am in this hybrid bioinformatic support position. So following along with these INBRE goals, which I'm sure you've already heard multiple times, we have similar goals in West Virginia. We need to build expertise and capacity for biomedical research. We want to develop those biomedical research programs and increase competitiveness for external funding. We want to generate student research opportunities. We already do a really good job of that, like I said, but particularly research opportunities in bioinformatics is kind of where we're heading in the future. And so we're trying to train this future workforce that is equipped with the tools to do bioinformatic work, or at the very least, communicate with bioinformaticians that they may collaborate with in the future. So I feel like bioinformatics is the missing link right now at West Liberty and probably at a lot of institutions across the country. Researchers have very interesting questions. They generate a lot of data because it's much cheaper to do that in a lot of senses these days. But they face these bottlenecks in data analysis that are really common. They also have difficulty interpreting results that they get. If they have someone help them analyze it, they may not be able to fully interpret what they are presented with. So there's just a lack of bioinformatic expertise at the faculty level, graduate level, and that all comes from this lack of training at the undergraduate level. So that's what we're trying to correct here. We have some really common challenges that I'm sure you're all aware of, but there is just this lack of awareness amongst the students, the undergraduates, of bioinformatics. If you ask any given undergraduate at our institution, how would you define bioinformatics? They would probably give you a blank stare. They don't have a great understanding of what it is or why it might be important or useful to them in their education. So we're really struggling just initially with them understanding that, this is a thing and it could be a useful thing for them in their future research. There is a lot of training and resources available free online, but I think that's part of the problem that they face is that they don't know where to begin. So really guided training with one-on-one interaction is really important at this level, I believe. And it's very hard for them to come by. They may find the training materials that they find on their own and access on their own a little unapproachable. So they're not really sure how to get started. They don't really have the exposure to bioinformatic careers as an option. So a lot of them come in, they think that they're going to be pre-med, they're going to be pre-vet, pre-professional programs, or they're going to, work in a zoo. We have a huge zoo science program, but they don't really have this concept of bioinformatics as a career that they could attain. And they also are deterred in a lot of cases because they're biology students. It seems like they have an aversion to anything really heavy in computer science or statistics, or they perceive bioinformatics to be really heavy in both of those fields. What they don't necessarily realize is that there are many different ways to come at bioinformatics. You can be a biologist who picks up some computer skills. So you don't have to be a computer genius to begin this journey. So some potential solutions that I've been exploring at West Liberty, just first of all, demystifying bioinformatics. So present those career options that are out there in this field and do it as early as possible and as often as possible. So kind of working this into conversations, working this into lesson plans in more general bio courses, I think will be very helpful for us. People who are bioinformatic ambassadors, I consider myself to be one of these, are very important. So having someone on campus who has the expertise and some experience and can talk to you about how they found their way to bioinformatics and what that actually means on a day-to-day basis in terms of the work that they do. And again, just emphasizing that there are many different ways into this field. We also need to emphasize the role that bioinformatics is playing in research findings. So, again, this emerging increase in big data in all fields of research is really important to emphasize that bioinformatics is going to play a key role into the future for analyzing that data and understanding biological questions. And then I'm going to try to empower and engage these students. So that means providing training opportunities, those guided training opportunities at every level, really. In this talk, I'm really focusing on the undergraduates, but I think this probably should start even at lower levels. I'll talk briefly about some K through 12 outreach that we're doing. And so to develop this, this is a really nice, simple figure that I pulled from a recent paper. So you need to identify your training needs, which is what we're working on doing. Curate materials. Again, we're kind of in this beginning stages of developing our content for these bioinformatic training opportunities. And all of these things go together into what we teach the undergraduates. We collect feedback from them. And ideally, we would publish these findings. So we're not quite to the publish openly phase of this process at West Liberty, but we're hoping to get there someday soon. We also, because we have this foundation in undergraduate research, are able to incorporate more bioinformatic analysis into the students' research. So they have generated their data. Now they can sit down and analyze it rather than just handing it off to someone and then getting back the finished figures. So we're trying to work on getting them to figure out how to actually analyze their data a little bit with us. And just in general, emphasize that this is problem solving. You don't have to have all this code memorized. That's not really how bioinformatics happens, but you need to know where to find the tools and how to use them and be able to think your way through these problems that come up. So like I said, I've done some K through 12 recruitment. Of course, with COVID, it's been kind of limited. So this is very recent development. Actually, last weekend, I did a small recruitment event where I used these Ozobots, which these are little programmable robots that follow color codes. So you can teach young kids how to program in a really intuitive sort of way. So I had grades 3 through 5 young girls working on programming their Ozobots to solve a problem or find its way through a maze. And then for the older kids, I have actually gone into the high school classrooms and I've talked about next generation sequencing, introduced the concept of bioinformatics, and then we've done some really basic mapping and variant calling on a very small scale. So just to kind of get their feet wet, get them thinking about when they go to college, this could be an option for them. Kind of adding on to that, coming from that, we want them to have an option once they get to college. So we're developing a bioinformatics major at our institution. I am developing it. So right now it's just me. And I'm teaching a few different courses that are going to ultimately be part of this major. So the first one is biological programming, which sounds a little scary. Got to work on that name, I think, a little bit to make it more palatable to biology students. But this is just really basic computing skills. So you get introduced to Linux, the command line, a lot of text-based bioinformatic file processing. So lots of FASTQ, FASTA file processing. Just learning how to automate tasks, learning the basics of programming that they probably haven't been exposed to at all before. So it's a class for complete beginners, and it's kind of amazing how much progress they can make in just a single semester. I will also ultimately be teaching what we're going to call Bioinformatics 1 and 2. Right now, I'm teaching Bioinformatics 1, and we are doing that through the Galaxy interface. So this is a completely online, server-based, interactive bioinformatic analysis workflows. And I find that this is really approachable for biology students who want to use bioinformatic pipelines for their research, but they are not so sure that they want to go down the route of Linux and command line and supercomputing. They just really have these small projects that they're working on. They want to know, how do I run an RNA-seq pipeline really quickly without installing anything on my computer or finding access to some kind of remote server. So it's pretty accessible, and we've been doing some different tutorials with them to kind of go through some really basic bioinformatic methods. And then we have a ton of affiliated courses, or what I'm terming affiliated courses. So things like phylogenetic theory, which I teach in the fall, applied microbiology, where the students actually get to sequence microbiomes, and then they will analyze it with my help. Genetics courses, we're working more bioinformatics, more computing into the basic core genetics that we teach at West Liberty. And then we have the opportunity for these independent student research projects as well. We're also elsewhere on campus, they are developing a data science program that's through the math department. So I expect there will be a lot of overlap between those two majors. So we're going to enhance research experiences by allowing them to actually generate their own next generation sequencing data. We have an Oxford nanopore MinION, and we have just secured an iSeq. So we will have Illumina, short read and long read data for them to analyze. So it's a really exciting time for the bio department. They're going to have so much data, and they're definitely going to need to know how to analyze this for their class projects. So that includes everything from amplicon sequencing, some people interested in doing eDNA. We've had a tick microbiome project done. I've used it for conservation genomics, so looking at relatedness of organisms of conservation concern. And then, of course, we can do RNA-seq as well. We also offer summer training opportunities. We have the SURE program, Summer Undergraduate Research Experience. That's an ongoing program at West Liberty, and I'm hoping to join in more with that in the future and actually training one-on-one students over the summer to do bioinformatic research. And then really specific to bioinformatics, we offer the Bioinformatics Bootcamp every summer. I say every summer. Last year was our first year offering it, and this year will be our second. But this is a 3-week event. It requires no previous experience. We go from having no computational experience to doing basic bioinformatic pipelines by the end of this project. So we start with an introduction to Linux and the command line. Then we go in the next couple of weeks into specific pipelines. So we give them a script that has the pipeline, and then we break this pipeline down into digestible chunks for them so that by the end of the week, they have run the entire thing and they can reproduce those results if they wanted to. So we do this for COVID-19 variant analysis and a mouse RNA-seq analysis. And the data that we use is actually from the genomics core. It's been generated by INBRE researchers in West Virginia. So here's kind of an example of how the lecture might go. We do a little PowerPoint introduction typically, and at the end of it, we may have some step-by-step directions for them to follow and explore and learn things about the input files and the analyses that they're going to run. So it's very one-on-one, very guided research. They work in pairs typically. That just kind of happened naturally in this first boot camp, people sitting next to each other, kind of helping each other out. And then Jim and I would kind of circle around and come in when we needed to help them troubleshoot and get through whatever problems they were having. So I think this is the most important aspect rather than the content of what we're teaching. That's pretty commonplace and I think pretty standardized in a lot of ways. But I think the interaction that we're having, the one-on-one, the guided help that they're getting is really important to these students. So here's an example of a path that we might follow, a pipeline that we might provide them. So this is our variant analysis on the SARS-CoV-19 data. So we would show them this at the beginning and they kind of lose their minds because it looks like gibberish. And then we walk through step by step, what is each of each of these commands doing? What does this mean? What happens if you modify it in this way or that way? And then they get to see from start to finish how this pipeline will get executed. So we go from the raw data all the way through to calling variants and then looking at them, comparing them across different samples assigned to different students, and they can compare their variants to one another. So this is currently just open to West Virginia INBRE undergraduates. So that's anybody enrolled currently in a West Virginia network institution. So it is kind of limited in terms of who can participate at this point. And we are capping it at about 10 students for now. This is still kind of in the pilot phase, I would say. We're still developing the content and the kind of core material for this bootcamp, but we plan on continuing doing this for several years to come. The students at the end of this get to do a poster presentation on an in silico manipulation of one of the pipelines. They get to kind of test out, manipulate some of the steps, use a different program, see what the output looks like, change the parameters of a particular program, and see how that affects their downstream results. And so that's what they present together at this poster presentation at the West Virginia Summer Symposium. So that will happen this year as well. It'll be at West Virginia University this year. So we have a lot of potential, I think, to expand participation in this event. Again, once we kind of have our core material down, our method figured out, we will hopefully be able to share and publish some of these curricular modules. So we are planning on doing this, but again, this is just kind of the initial phases. A really exciting time to be a part of the development of this bioinformatic expertise. So if anyone is on here that is a member of West Virginia INBRE, tell all of your students, have them apply. They can find us online. You can email me about it directly if you'd like. It's a pretty good deal. They get a stipend, they get housing and food paid for, and they get to learn all of these bioinformatic topics. And with that, I think I will take any questions that anyone has.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicole. That was an amazing presentation. We have a few questions for you.
Okay, great.
The first one is, what is special about people who return back to education later in life in terms of their ability to learn bioinformatics, and especially what career options they end up choosing?
So I'm not sure about the career options part of that, but I will say that the non-traditional students that I've worked with to date, and again, it's a small sample size, it's a small school, but they tend to be much more focused. They have a much greater appreciation of what bioinformatics is good for, what it could be used for, kind of more perspective, I guess, is what they come back with. So they are more open to kind of exploring these methods, and they seem to be more interested than a lot of the really young students that come straight from high school in the career opportunities, especially. So when I say that you can work for a hospital, you could work for a private company, you could work for the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service. There are all kinds of different positions opening up for people with these types of skill sets. So I think they see the value in that.
Yes, definitely. So along similar lines to that, what is the minimal set of skills a biology-oriented student must have to kind of begin their journey into bioinformatics?
So I would say that I kind of hesitate to frame it as the minimal number of skills, just because I think that people with no experience are more than capable of picking up these skills very quickly. And I've seen it happen. I think what's more important is not having the fear that's associated with kind of the stigma of, oh, I'm not good at computers, or I'm not good at math. And they think that they need to be, like I said, like rock star geniuses when it comes to all of these different fields, when really what's most important is they love biology and they're willing to learn and try to learn the computer part of it. And so students who really don't like to fail seem to have a lot of trouble with bioinformatics because it's mostly failure. You try something, doesn't work, you troubleshoot and you figure out the problem. So it's definitely a skill and a muscle that not all of them have developed. But I think it's definitely worthwhile, even for students who don't want to pursue a career in bioinformatics, just for the problem solving skills alone. I think it's very valuable.
Yes, definitely. Another question, does such a small undergraduate population have benefits when it comes to bioinformatics research?
I think it does, and it's kind of the same set of benefits that really are in our favor when it comes to research. We get that one-on-one approach. When the students have a question, they just walk right into my office and talk to me about it. So they have a lot of access to expertise that I think you might not experience at a larger school where you're kind of just one of many students in a course. And when I teach a bioinformatics course, I have less than 10 people typically, especially at these early stages of developing the coursework. So I get to work with them directly and really adapt my teaching style and the content of the course to them and their interests.
Definitely. So another question, which of the programs that you've mentioned seem to have the greatest learning impact on young students?
Of the different courses?
Yes, I think that's what was meant.
Okay. I think the biological programming has the potential to have a big impact because it teaches these basic programming skills that I think it's like a foot in the door into computer science that they may not have experienced before. So they know pretty quickly, I think, whether or not they like it. And then that's kind of like their first taste that brings them further along this career path toward becoming a bioinformatician.
Great, thank you. And then one final question. Have you had any of your boot camp projects result in a application?
Not yet, but that would be fantastic if we could get there one day. It's such a kind of short program in the grand scheme of things. We do have, like, the SURE program is like a 9-week program, and we have had student publications result from that. So I think it might need a little bit more time to develop than just the 3 weeks. But if we had a student that was interested, they could always pick up with student research at their institution or collaborate with West Liberty into the future. So there's the potential there, but it hasn't happened yet.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay. I think that is all. Thank you again very much for coming and speaking with us today, Dr. Garrison.
Thank you.